Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. A while ago, Apple announced that they're moving away from Intel chips in their Macs and moving to their own Apple Silicon chips that they've been using in iPhones and iPads for a long time. A few weeks ago, we finally saw the fruits of those labours with the first Macs with Apple Silicon chips, the M1 series, I guess we could call it, including the new MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and what I purchased, the Mac Mini. As soon as I saw it in their event, I knew that the Mac Mini was something I really wanted, and I pre-ordered it straight away. I went for the Mac Mini, which has the 8-core CPU and 8-core GPU. It has the 16-core neural engine, whatever that means. And then I went for 16 gig of RAM and the 1TB SSD. The RAM, I upped it because unlike the previous Mac Minis, it's not user replaceable, so I thought I'll go for as much as I can at the moment. And the SSD because I'm going to primarily use it for video editing, and Final Cut can produce pretty big render files in the background, and also the proxy media, that kind of stuff takes up a lot of space. So I don't want to be running out on the internal SSD. So in this video, I'm going to show you a bit of the unboxing experience. We'll discuss Apple Silicon in general, how I found the setup and whether all my old Intel apps worked, that kind of stuff. We'll look at benchmarks a little bit, how Final Cut performs, and I'll also talk about what I want to do next with the Mac Mini in terms of videos, as I want to do quite a bit on this because it's a really exciting product. So the unboxing experience is classic Apple really. Even the brown box it ships in is, you can tell it's just different. The way that you pull the tab and it just pops out for you in the box, it's unique. It's uniquely Apple. There isn't really too much to the unboxing. Obviously you get the Mac Mini itself, you get a couple of leaflets, the usual instructional stuff, warranty information, and you get one giant Apple sticker. Not two like they used to, but I don't really have any plans to stick it anywhere, but it is what it is. And lastly, you get a figure of 8 power cable. And it's nice to see that they're still including that. Ports wise, we've got that aforementioned figure of 8 for power. We've got 2 Thunderbolt 3/USB 4 ports, 2 USB-A ports, which are also USB 3. We've got a single HDMI, single gigabit Ethernet, which I know there's been some bit of disappointment that there's not a 10 gig offering. And a headphone jack, which, yep, it's not dead yet. So there has been a little bit of disappointment that this version only has 2 Thunderbolt ports, and similarly on the MacBook Pro, it only has 2, whereas on the Intel versions, you can get the models with 4. To me, this suggests we're going to see more high-end models in the future that probably have the 4 Thunderbolt ports, as that 4-port MacBook Pro hasn't been replaced yet, and also the Intel Mac Mini is still available with the 4 Thunderbolt ports. And also the Mac Mini's in silver and not space grey, so again, that suggests to me that there's going to be another high-end model coming, maybe next year, maybe a bit later, we'll have to wait and see. And that'll potentially maybe have a rumoured sort of M1X chip and maybe take more RAM, that kind of stuff, and a few more options. Maybe even a discrete GPU. We don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see. Because as Apple did say, this is a 2-year transition, so not all of the machines are going to get replaced in one go. Apple Silicon in general. Apple have been using Intel chips since, I think, they announced it in 2005, and I think the first product shipped around 2006. And I think since 2007, macOS has been Intel only. So for them to shift to their own chips is quite a big change, and it's something that's not happened in a long time. One of the good things about them using Intel chips was you could buy the same processors yourself that Apple used off the shelf, and build your own PC and run it as a Hackintosh, is what the community is called, to be running Mac OS on hardware that's not certified by Apple. So that's what I've been doing actually for the last 2 years, as I didn't think Apple offered a reasonable price to performance alternative. So I had a i7 8700K, which is a 6-core CPU, an AMD RX 580, that was the graphics card, and I had 32 gig of RAM in there. And this has been my main machine for the last 2 years basically, and that's what I used for my channel. I do all my video editing on there, and I also have Windows on there which I boot into if I want to play some games. Providing that the Mac Mini lives up to what I think it's going to do, that machine is now going to become purely a gaming rig, so I'm probably going to look at upgrading the GPU at some point, and the Mac Mini is going to be my main sort of content creation rig, I guess, so hopefully we'll see that it lives up to that. So generally, Hackintoshes have got to the point over the last few years where they're more or less indistinguishable from real Macs, and you can get to a very good level of stability as well, but you do still sometimes run into issues with stuff like sleep, USB controllers, and then also sometimes when there's a new update, it might not be the most straightforward thing in the world, but it's still not quite as stable as owning a real Mac, and that's something that I'm quite looking forward to about owning the Mini. So like I said, one of the main reasons for me myself building a Hackintosh, and one of the main reasons why the community exists, is for a long time Apple didn't really offer anything that was a good value in terms of price to performance. Now with the new M1 series of computers, especially the Mac Mini, for me at least, I feel like they do offer that now, and that's one of the main reasons why I've come back to the Mac. So let's talk about that, how that move's gone for me so far. So I've been a Mac user for about 7 years when I got my first MacBook Air. Since then, I've started to have a suite of apps that I sort of always install on any Mac that I use to make it mine. So one thing I was worried about moving to a new processor architecture is, are my favorite apps going to work out of the box. And that's where something called Rosetta 2 steps in. The original Rosetta was Apple's translation layer that helped them move from PowerPC to Intel. So basically it ran on Intel Macs, and it basically any software that was supported for your PowerPC based Mac, you could then run it on Intel. They brought it back for Apple Silicon, though Apple executives have said that the only thing Rosetta 2 shares with Rosetta 1 is its name, and this is actually basically rebuilt from the ground up. So generally, quite a lot of the apps that I use have already been updated, so better touch tools is something I consider essential to allow me to customize gestures on my trackpad. Chrome is my browser of choice at the moment. It used to be Microsoft Edge. Chrome edges it out at the moment, especially because they've now got an M1 build available already, which is brilliant. My main video editing app is Final Cut Pro, so Apple had that updated out the gate, so that was great. And then I also use Photoshop to make my thumbnails, that kind of stuff, and any other photo editing. So Photoshop is one of the examples of something that hasn't been updated for Apple Silicon yet, but it runs brilliantly through Rosetta, and I haven't had any issues yet. It feels just as snappy as it did on my Intel Hackintosh. But saying that, I'm not a power user in Photoshop by any means. Probably the most powerful thing I do is click the remove background button. And that works for me absolutely fine. So no issues there so far. But yeah, so Apple does claim that some apps running in the Rosetta layer will actually run faster than they do on Intel Macs, which is pretty outstanding. And to be honest, at the moment I'm inclined to believe them because, like I said, my experience with Photoshop so far has been flawless. The only app I've had an issue with so far is Google Backup and Sync. That lets you sync your Google Drive files to your Mac and also sync your Mac files to Google Drive. It keeps quitting for me for some reason. I'm going to try reinstalling that and see how that goes. But so far, everything else has been pretty great. And I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised at the amount of apps that have already updated with Apple Silicon versions. It's pretty great, to be honest, and it's a much faster uptake than I expected. Especially Chrome, I thought that would be a holdout for a while, but it's pretty great to see that there's a build already. It works great. It's Chrome as fast as it normally is, and all the extensions work and stuff, so it's great. I've had so few issues, you kind of forget that there's been a process of transition at all. But one of the things that does remind you about the transition is just how quiet the machine is. My Mac Mini's there in the background now, and I can't hear it at all. I'm not doing anything at the moment, but even when I'm editing video in Final Cut, I've got Photoshop open, exporting video, watching video in Chrome, etc. The fan is just doing basically nothing, which is pretty awesome, especially for when I'm recording videos. When I had my Hackintosh running, you'd be able to hear the fans pretty much no matter what. MacBook Pro would be the same. It'd get hot doing any remedial task and the fans would kick in. So yeah, especially for recording video and stuff, having a noisy machine, it can be a pain. The Mac Mini can do everything that I already did on a Mac, but it does it at least as quick, if not faster, and it does it without making a noise, which is just amazing. The lights that I'm using at the moment to keep my room lit for the video is they make more noise than the Mac Mini does, which just says it all really. So we'll have a quick talk about benchmarks. They don't really tell you about real world performance, but they give you a rough idea, I guess, of what to expect. And the benchmarks from the Mac Mini in particular are pretty amazing. So the scores are on screen now. So if you look at the single core score, it beats any Intel based Mac that's out there at the moment, which is amazing. And multi-core is only really beaten by stuff that has a huge amount of cores and very expensive machines like the iMac Pro, the Mac Pro, that kind of thing. So it's pretty amazing to see this kind of performance in a little machine like this. And again, like I said, pretty much without making a noise. You can also run Geekbench in compatibility mode, and people have shown that even in that it still beats out a lot of the Intel chips when it's running in Rosetta, which is pretty amazing to be honest. And it kind of backs up Apple's claim about even in Rosetta there'll be apps that run faster on these new M1 Macs than they do on Intel Macs traditionally, which again, it's just amazing. For real world stuff, something I like to look at is Final Cut Pro. That's one of the main reasons why I stay on a Mac, is I edit all my videos in Final Cut Pro and I find it a really good experience. So Apple have already done really amazing things with Final Cut on Intel Macs with not as powerful hardware as maybe their Windows counterparts, but they get pretty amazing results by optimizing the hardware and software. And now with the M1 chip, they're able to take that to the next level because they're controlling the entire stack. So you can see in Final Cut, I'm able to scrub around the timeline smoothly, and this is 4K footage straight out of my camera. My export times are great as well. And again, it's doing this, I keep reiterating this point, it's doing this all without making a noise. This is at the same time that I have it connected to my 1440p monitor, which is 3440 by 1440 at 75 Hertz. That's quite a lot of pixels it's pushing. And I have a secondary monitor, which is 2560 by 1080 at 60 Hertz. So yeah, it's connected to both. It's pushing a lot of pixels. I'm using Final Cut. I've got Chrome open. I'm doing everything that I normally would, and it's not missing a beat at all. And this is also with the better quality footage selected in the timeline so that I can get a better view of what I'm editing rather than the better performance mode. So I think this is the first generation, and these are technically the low end models. It's just amazing the performance that I'm getting here. And the whole time I've had the Mini so far, which is not long, I'll admit, but in anything I've thrown at it, I'm just not able to get the fan to kick in at all, which is just, again, I keep saying that, but it is amazing. So look, this isn't a full review. I haven't had the Mac Mini long enough to make a full conclusion, but I've got to say Apple Silicon is off to an amazing start. The optimization Apple's able to do by controlling the entire stack, the software, the hardware, everything, it's just incredible, and I think it's going to be quite hard for others to compete with them at the moment. They seem to have an edge on the chips, and they're they're churning out some really amazing stuff. We've known for a long time that the iPad Pro is immensely powerful, so to finally see that in a sort of real Mac environment, it's just amazing. There are other benefits as well that I haven't discussed, like the ability to run iPad apps and iOS apps on the Mac. So I'm going to probably do a full video testing out those and seeing which ones the best are. So if you want to stay tuned for that, hit the subscribe button. And if you've got any favorite apps from your iPad or iPhone that you want me to check out and let you know how they run on the Mac, let me know in the comments below. That would be great. I'm also going to do some more tests on like stuff like gaming, some more real world tests that I can find, some more video editing stuff. And if you've got anything in particular that you want to see me do a video on, let me know in the comments. I'd love to get your feedback, and if there's things that you want to know about the M1, I'm going to try and do as much testing as I can. So that's pretty much it for this one. Like I said, if there's anything you want to see about the M1, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to test it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks guys.